Probably the most famous arcade world record of all time is the Donkey Kong high score, and that's probably because there was a feature-length movie made about it. Released in 2007, King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters documents two players, Billy Mitchell and Steve Wiebe, on their quest to hold the title of the highest score in Donkey Kong. It won several awards, and was actually put in several critics' lists of the top 10 films in 2007. Now, I love this film. It's really great to look into the lives of these two guys and watch the battle for the world record. But the issue with the film is that it's very inaccurate. Parts of it were exaggerated, or even outright fabricated, for the sake of making a better story. So, I'm here to set the record straight. I usually only talk about speedrunning related records, but I think I need to try to do this legendary world record some justice. Let's look at the actual world record progression for one of the most famous world records in all of video gaming, the Donkey Kong high score.
Why are these stages so hard? Like, I can tell you, the kind of luck that I'm getting right now is just, like, what is this? Is this even Donkey Kong?
The first thing to understand is just what makes Donkey Kong such a hard game. On the surface, it may seem like a standard platformer, but don't be fooled. It is a product of an era where arcade games were meant to steal your money. Donkey Kong is made up of 4 stages that loop in a strange way. The first, and most common level, is the barrel stage. Your goal is to get from here to here, but Donkey Kong is doing everything he can to stop you. He's throwing barrels, which randomly can decide to roll or go down ladders, and if you touch one, you're dead. In addition to throwing them, he can also decide to drop them, either falling straight down really fast, or bouncing off of each floor on the way down. Finally, there are fireballs that can chase you as well, and because of their random movement, controlling them is nearly impossible. These barrel stages are generally regarded as being the most difficult in the entire game. Next up is the elevator stage. You need to get to the top once again, and once you're on the top level, you need to avoid getting hit by this. It's not too hard at first, but it gets a lot harder as the game goes on. Then, there's the Pie Factory. This stage has you dodging pies and fireballs, which move randomly, all while adjusting to the floor, which has you moving in different directions. In theory, this stage can be completed very quickly to get you a lot of bonus points, but if the game wants, it can make it nearly impossible. Finally, there's the final rivet stage. You must go over each of the 8 rivets in order to have Donkey Kong fall from his perch on the top of the screen, all while dodging the numerous fireballs that spawn and randomly move.
Oh crap. Yes, I am a magician.
Let's go back to the early 80s. Arcade games were on the rise, and it seemed like you couldn't go just about anywhere without running into one of these machines. In 1982, Walter Day opened Twin Galaxies, a public database dedicated to tracking high scores in various arcade games. That November, Day decided he wanted to get more publicity for the arcade gaming scene. So, he invited some of the country's top arcade gamers to face off in the games they were best at, and get put in Life magazine.
About 18 world champion video players trekked to the center of the video universe for a group photo. Life magazine wanted to keep their pictorial under wraps and refused to let KTVO film the proceedings. But Walter Day tells us Main Street was roped off at dawn and video games were pushed out into the street.
One player, a 17-year-old named Billy Mitchell, got invited for his Centipede score, and an 18-year-old, Steve Sanders, got invited for Donkey Kong. According to Sanders' claim at the time, he managed to score 3,165,300 points. This score was 100% fake. But nobody knew that at the time. Sanders just made up a ridiculously high score to get the popularity. Nobody knew, except for Billy Mitchell. He knew that it was physically impossible for anybody to get a score even close to that high. So, he challenged Sanders to a game of Donkey Kong at the meetup. And to be fair, Sanders played decently. He scored around 200,000 points. Billy Mitchell, on the other hand, scored 874,300 points. The only thing that stopped him from going higher than that was the kill screen. You see, the kill screen is how Mitchell knew that Sanders' score was fake. Most classic arcade games have an eventual end, known as a kill screen. Not an end that was programmed into the game, but rather one that results from a glitch. In Pac-Man, for example, the 256 level has the right half of the screen appear as a garbled mess, and in Donkey Kong, this kill screen occurs in the 20-second set of boards. The way the game determines how much time to give you to complete each stage is by taking whatever set of boards you're on, adding 4 to it, and multiplying it by 10. For this 20-second set, for example, the game should be giving you 260 units of time to complete each stage in the board. But an integer overflow occurs when this number is bigger than 256. So instead of giving you 260 units of time, it gives you 4 units of time. You die from time running out shortly after starting the stage. Mitchell's score ended up shaking everything up. He wasn't even supposed to be there to play Donkey Kong, and yet he still scores 874,000 points. Twin Galaxies then verified that to be the official world record for Donkey Kong, and Billy Mitchell's mark was first left on the arcade gaming scene. It was clear that Mitchell's score was amazing to everyone back in 1982, since nobody else could score anywhere close to that. But just how good was that score? Years later, Mitchell was still on top, with the same score that he had set back in 1982. Very rarely do records for anything stand this long, let alone a game as popular as the original Donkey Kong. It just showed how dominant Billy Mitchell was in the arcade. Finally though, one man was determined to knock Mitchell off the top. In the summer of 2000, Tim Serby, who was playing in his home in Auburn, New York, was closing in on Billy's score, and on August 17th, he made history.
New champion, new Donkey Kong champion. Congratulations.
It took 18 years, but Billy Mitchell was no longer on top. There was a new champion of Donkey Kong, and his name was Tim Serby. As can be expected, his record left a lot of people amazed. It seemed like nobody was ever going to be able to beat Billy Mitchell. After all, having a record for close to 2 decades does make it appear to be that way. But someone had finally been able to catch up to, and then surpass, Billy Mitchell.
That's me.
Serby's record would stand for quite a while, but by 2003, a new challenger was approaching. You all know him from the King of Kong? This new challenger was named Steve Wiebe. In June 2003, Steve Wiebe managed to get the world record. Alright. When Tim Serby got the record from Billy Mitchell, he got it by about 5,000 points. When Steve Wiebe got it from Tim Serby, he got it by close to 70,000 points. Wiebe scored 947,200 points. The reason he was able to score so many points was by doing a technique known as point pressing, where you try to maximize the amount of points you get in each level. The bonus meter at the top of the screen counts down, so the faster you get to the end of the level, the more points you get. So you'd think that the way to get the most points is to complete the stage as quickly as possible, but in reality, you can score much more points by effectively jumping over barrels and smashing them with your hammer. The more you get, the more bonus points you get. Once Wiebe was able to master this point pressing technique, he was able to demolish the old world record. Wiebe's record blew many people's minds, and Twin Galaxies verified it a week later. There was a new, undisputed champion of Donkey Kong. But then, disaster struck for Wiebe. When verifiers took another look at his video submission, they noticed that instead of playing on an original Donkey Kong arcade cabinet, he had played on a double Donkey Kong cabinet, which had both the original Donkey Kong and the sequel, Donkey Kong Jr., built in. Nobody could say for certain whether or not the board inside the cabinet was identical to that of a standard machine. After getting all of the Twin Galaxies officials to discuss, referee Robert Merksek announced that Weeby's 947,000 score would be reclassified as a double Donkey Kong score, and would be removed from the official leaderboards. So, even though his score was close to 70,000 behind Weeby, Tim Serby was back on top. Over the past 20 years, Billy Mitchell had been busy getting records in countless arcade games. He got the first recognized perfect score on Pac-Man, got the record in Miss Pac-Man, Burger Time, and Centipede. In May 2004, he showed up to the Midwest Gaming Classic, an arcade event in Milwaukee, and scored 933,900 points live at the event. It was enough to beat Serby's score by a significant margin, but he still trailed Weeby by 14,000 points. Luckily for him, that didn't matter. Since Weeby's score wasn't recognized as legitimate, Mitchell's score went up on the Twin Galaxies website as the official world record. But Steve Weeby decided enough was enough. He knew he should have the record. His score was the highest, and he was determined to prove to everybody that he was the best. So he grinded in his garage more and more, this time not using a double Donkey Kong machine. 2 days after Mitchell's 933,000 score, Weeby submitted a score of 985,000 points to Twin Galaxies, 40,000 ahead of his unverified record, and 50,000 ahead of Billy Mitchell's verified run. And a month after that, he scored 999,500 points. So close to a million, it was natural to Steve what he had to do next. And just a month later, Twin Galaxies announced that Weeby had submitted a new score, 1,600,000 points. This was amazing. He had broken the record 3 times in the matter of a few months. He submitted the 3 runs to Twin Galaxies, and they took a careful look at the playthroughs. In fact, the verifiers were so thorough that they actually sent verifiers to Steve Weeby's house to look at his machine in his garage. Finally, a few months later, Twin Galaxies posted their decision. All 3 of Weeby's new records were rejected. Again. What was it that Steve Weeby kept doing wrong? He kept putting up amazing performance after amazing performance, but kept getting shut down. Well, it turns out, when the Twin Galaxies verifiers went to his house to look at his machine, they found out where he got it from. This machine was given to Steve Weeby by a guy named Roy Schult. In Twin Galaxies' eyes, Roy Schult was suspicious, to say the least. According to referee Robert Merksek, Schult had previously issued death threats to Billy Mitchell, had spent the majority of his time pestering gamers at FunSpot 2003, pestered the management at Sun Valley, made a girl cry with abusive phone calls he had made at FunSpot, and even caused the FunSpot forums to be closed down. So, by giving Steve Weeby the game board, Twin Galaxies suspected that he had given Weeby some sort of edge with the board, so that he could take down the man who Schult hated the most, Billy Mitchell. So, in November 2004, Robert Merksek made the statement that his records were not valid due to the involvement of a third-party official. So now, once again, the verified high score record was not Steve Weeby's 1 million point game, but rather Billy Mitchell's 933,000 point game. Thankfully for Weeby though, he would have another chance to prove himself. FunSpot 2005 was coming up, where gamers competed to set live world records, and Weeby would have a chance to do it for Donkey Kong. And sure enough, he did it. 985,600 points. It may not have beaten his million point game, but it was enough to beat Mitchell's verified record, which was over a year old by that point, by a significant margin. It was verified by Walter Day, who was present to watch him get it live, and went up on the website. For the first time, Steve Weeby had the uncontested high score in Donkey Kong. Then, the next day happened. Billy Mitchell didn't show up to the FunSpot tournament that year, just as in years past, because of personal reasons. He didn't know that Weeby was going to show up, and he sent in a VHS tape to the FunSpot tournament. What was on this tape? It was a grainy VHS tape of Billy Mitchell playing Donkey Kong from June 2004, and scoring 1,047,200 points. They showed a screening of this tape at the event, while Steve Weeby was off in another part of the event trying to score his million point game. But he wasn't able to get it. Mitchell's tape got the attention at the event, so much that he actually called several people at the event days after and apologized for grandstanding. Strangely enough, Even though all of Weeby's previous tape scores had gone through an intense verification process, Billy Mitchell's was verified by Walter Day the same day he sent it in, and it went on twingalaxies.com. Robert Merczek, however, realized that they really should look more carefully at this tape before coming to a decision, so 3 days later, June 7th, 2005, he took it down from the website. Steve Wiebe was temporarily back on top. One thing that the verifiers noticed about Mitchell's tape was that he was actually on pace to score far more than what he scored. Merczek was quoted as saying this game could have easily hit 1.1 million points, but instead, Mitchell began to dump points on the final few screens intentionally so that he could finish his game exactly 100,000 points ahead of Wiebe's 947,000 score that he had set years prior. Why would he do this? Well, nobody really knows. There were also a few glitches on the tape, notably in the 600,000 range, but the verifiers finally decided that the score was legit in 2006. Mitchell was just too tough to beat. He always had something new up his sleeve. But in August 2006, Steve Wiebe was finally, for the first time, able to undisputably beat Billy Mitchell's score, getting 1,049,100 points in his garage. He was careful to show that everything about the score was legitimate, and his score was verified in early 2007. Wiebe had done it. So now, it was Billy Mitchell's turn to fire back. And yes, he did, in 2007, live at a mortgage brokers convention in Florida. Apparently, Mitchell's score was displayed on a big screen with no audio while he was playing in another room. Except there's not a single known witness who saw him play in the other room. He beat Wiebe by exactly 1,100 points, scoring 1,050,200 points. And just as he had done in his last record, he could have gone much higher, but instead completely let go of the controls and let the game take his last 2 lives from him. Was the 1,100 points a reference to the 1.1 million points he could have gotten? 3 years then passed, with nobody being able to take the score any higher. The last time there had been a gap this long was from 2000 to 2003, when Tim Serby was the record holder. But then, somebody once again was able to score a few thousand points higher. This time though, it wasn't Steve Wiebe or Billy Mitchell. It was a plastic surgeon named Hank Chen.
Smash a barrel, that's it? Yeah, 2 barrels sometimes. Yeah, that's it. New world record!
So how did Billy Mitchell respond? By going to a Boomer's arcade and beating the record by exactly 1,100 points, then letting go of the controls and killing his last lives off. Again. 3 weeks later though, Wiebe submitted another tape of him scoring 1,064,500 points. It seemed like these 3 were going to be trading the record off for ages to come. As it turns out though, Hank Chen was unstoppable.
Yeah, that's it.
New world record!
Oh my god!
By November 2012, Chen had taken the record all the way up to 1,138,600 points. How much more could this go up? Players were point pressing more and more, and they were abusing the barrel board to its absolute maximize the amount of points they could get. Chen had a stranglehold over the game, but finally, 2 years later, one player was able to beat him, Robbie Lakeman.
Oh my god, I did it.
Lakeman kept improving his score more and more as well, and soon it became clear that once somebody scored 1.2 million, that would probably be it for Donkey Kong. The level of optimization was getting ridiculous for a 2-hour marathon. Most people figured it would be Robbie Lakeman that would be the first to get there. But then, yet another player, Wes Copeland, was determined to be the first one. They traded scores for more than a year, and then, in May 2016, Wes Copeland made history. Nobody has beaten this score. In fact, many are saying that it's very likely that this is as high as the score will ever go. It's hit its breaking point. Wes Copeland is the true King of Kong, and that is the true world record progression for Donkey Kong. I should add one thing though. Every record that you saw in this video was done on an arcade machine, and not on a computer in an emulator. Using an emulator is a much more convenient option, but Twin Galaxies never accepted emulator submissions as legitimate, so I, as well as most of the rest of the Donkey Kong community, left them out. But there were a couple of times when the emulator high score was actually higher than the arcade high score. Ben Jos Walbeheim had 893,000 and 904,000 from September 1999 until June 2003, and Dean Saglio had the highest score from July 2009 until May 2016. He was actually the first person to break 1.2 million, but since it was on emulator, it wasn't officially recognized. This iconic game has had an absolutely bizarre history. Hopefully now though, you're able to get an idea of why Donkey Kong has the legacy that it has. Thanks for watching.